Summer vacation. The wonderful time of year we all look forward to. Heading off for rest, relaxation, lots of fun, and a break from the mundane. But only in the last 2 centuries has the idea of recreational travel become commonplace. And back in the 1800s, when the idea really took off, leisure travels looked quite a bit different than they do today. But how did a health craze create hundreds of resorts across America, help build towns and cities, and then all but disappear from our culture? Let's take a look at one such resort, its birth, thriving life, and tragic end. This is the story of Salem, Virginia's Lake Spring Resort. Welcome to SkyParlorHistory, where we rummage around in America's attic and awaken the sleeping stories of the past. Before we get started, subscribe to our channel and leave us a comment on the next story you'd like us to uncover. Lake Spring Park, or the Duck Pond as it's often called by locals, is a 3-acre park that sits inconspicuously on Salem's Main Street, across one way from the city's electrical department and the other way from a Burger King. And while it does boast some scenic views and has been the location of many first dates, weddings, and events over recent years, it can be hard to imagine it as anything other than a small neighborhood park. But in its heyday, Lake Spring was a renowned resort destination that drew in thousands of visitors from all over the country each year. So what happened? Well, to find out, we must first go way back to ancient civilization. Back in the early BCs, the ancient Romans, Egyptians, and Greeks all believed in the healing power of bathing. Egyptians would bathe their royalty with oils and flowers. Romans were famous for their communal bathhouses, and the Greek physician Hippocrates prescribed bathing in water from hot or cold springs to cure sickness. In North America, Native Americans had long known the benefits of the mineral springs and often congregated there to take advantage of their medicinal properties. Fast forward to the 19th century, where Western culture was obsessed with all things ancient. On top of that, medical knowledge was growing exponentially. As the practice of medicine grew, doctors operated on a much less personal basis, and their terms became too alienating and scientific for the average patient to understand. That's when hydropathy, or the water cure, was developed as the layman's approach to healing that didn't need fancy scientific language to understand. By the 1850s, hot and cold spring resorts were popping up all over America, mostly in railroad towns. Most were billed as healthy getaways for the whole family, enjoyed by the invalid and vigorous alike. Dr. William Burke, author of the 1846 book, The Mineral Springs of Western Virginia, and owner of a spring himself, talks of how people would flock to springs to cure a variety of ailments, from indigestion to paralysis. Burke described people ranging from sickly invalids to healthy, robust young men flocking to the springs, with the emaciated sick people waiting their turn to get in the water while the young, healthy youth took their turn. Fast forward again to the 1870s, Flavius Josephus Chapman, entrepreneur and son of local hotelier, is working on his newest project, a mineral spring resort in the heart of Salem, Virginia, a town whose main street was a part of the Great Wagon Road. His location of choice was the Great Spring, or Johnston Spring, in the heart of Salem. It was at the base of a hill housing the scenic West Hill Cemetery and sat right off of Salem's main street, a perfect stop for visitors from nearby Roanoke and beyond. The springs had been a common stop for former President Andrew Jackson when he would pass through Salem years earlier. Meanwhile, the Salem Town Council was looking to add water systems to the growing town to free residents from the dependence on wells and springs. The town council asked for bids for the contract to develop the new waterworks. Ever the opportunistic businessman, Flavius put in a proposal to dig lakes using the springs as a source. He planned to have Salem finance his lakes, which could serve as the citizens' water supply, but also as the centerpiece for his new mineral resort. What could go wrong? The majestic hotel rose 50 yards away as the lakes were graded for the reservoirs just to the west. The Lake Spring Hotel opened in July of 1876. The resort prospered. The Grand Hotel had accommodations for about 150 guests. The resort also boasted cabins for larger groups and families that came in several distinct styles, including quaint cottages and rustic cabins. Cost of board was $2.50 for one night and $40 for a month, with a special rate for families. When circuses would come through town, It's said that Flavius would let the elephants and other animals bathe in the lakes for their health. Questionable, since it was also the water source for the whole town, but great for the elephants. And don't be mistaken, although health was a huge selling point, this was still a vacation resort after all, and there was plenty to do. Many dining rooms and ballrooms, omnibuses, a resident band of musicians, billiard saloons, and bowling. 10 acres of forest especially designed with women and children's amusement in mind. Fishing, hunting, and specialty picturesque drives and walks, including a path through Salem's old and beautiful West Hill Cemetery. It drew in guests from all over the country. People came in search of the healing waters, good weather, and fun. A few years after the hotel opened, Chapman purchased the nearby Roanoke Red Sulphur Springs Resort in Catawba Valley, Virginia. There were connecting stagecoaches between the two vacation destinations daily, Roanoke Red being further away from civilization and 700 acres, whereas Lake Spring was conveniently near town and 10 acres. Not only was Lake Spring Hotel a tourist attraction, it was also a bustling social hub for Salem, and was known far and wide for its jubilant parties to match every occasion. As usual, our old friend Flavius was always looking ahead to the newest opportunity. And in 1877, when he heard about the magic of voices traveling over wire, he had to get a slice of that cake. By this time, he owned 3 hotels, Lake Spring, Roanoke Red, and the Central, and he connected all 3 by telephone wires. It was the first time telephones had ever come to Salem, but it was such a primitive system it didn't last long. It would be 9 years before another phone line came to the town, so Flavius was ahead of the game. But maybe a little too far ahead. Although Lake Spring was known far and wide for its health benefits, one legend claims it didn't work out for some guests. 1 year after the telephones were installed, Mary Vose and her husband Henry traveled to Lake Spring Resort from their home in New Orleans, perhaps getting away from the industrial boom in the city and escaping to the clean air of rural Virginia. One night during their stay, they took a stroll through West Hill Cemetery, which overlooks the lakes, the town, and the Blue Ridge Mountains rising in the distance. While meandering through the headstones, Mary commented on how nice it would be to be buried there. Well, she got her wish. That very night, she died. And to this day, her conspicuous grave is the centerpiece of West Hill Cemetery. It's interesting to think about the world she died in. Her funeral was held in a destination resort, her burial overlooking a grand hotel, and although her beautiful grave remains mostly the same, if not weathered, it now sits in the middle of a residential neighborhood overlooking a modern suburbia. But what happened to the thriving resort? Flavius Chapman decided to sell the resort in 1890 to W.F.M. McCarthy, and at the same time, Flavius bought another hotel down the road, which would become his final enterprise. In 1891, Flavius built his own home overlooking his beloved resort and lakes. Just 1 year later, Flavius would have a front-row seat as his prized endeavors went up in flames. As mentioned earlier, Lake Spring Resort was known for its parties. They held one for every occasion, and June 15th of 1892 was no different. That night, the resort was hosting a ball celebrating the hotel's summer opening. It's easy to imagine all the hotel guests, as well as the elite of Salem, wandering around the glistening lakes and up the path to the entrance of the Grand Hotel. Flavius probably watched the crowd mill about from his porch across the way, proud and thankful that so many came to enjoy the party and returned to the resort year after year, keeping it thriving. The partygoers danced through the night and into the early hours of the morning to the sound of Lake Spring's own band, all the men in suits and all the women in elegant dresses, and lots of delicious food. At around 2:15 a.m., the party was winding down. The band was playing the song Home Sweet Home, and the guests slowly began to meander out onto the resort's ground and on their way, when a fire broke out in the center of the main hotel near the observatory and soon spread to a nearby cottage. Panicked and with the fire department nowhere to be seen, the departing guests in their tuxedos and dresses rushed to form a bucket brigade to save the hotel. But it was no use. When the fire department did arrive, they focused on the cottage nearby, just barely saving it. When the fire department went to attend to the hotel, it was nothing but smoldering ruins. As for the cause, no one knows, as there had been no fire in the fireplace in the main building that day or lamp in the attic. So the loss of the Grand Lake Spring Hotel remains a mystery to this day. only a handful of artifacts remain to serve as a tangible reminder of the resort. Amazingly, one of these items is Flavius Chapman's own notepad. In it is written his name and a book curse warning to would-be thieves. "Steal not this book, my honest friend, for fear the gallows will be your end. And on the judgment day the Lord will say, where is that book you stole away? And if you say, I do not know, then God will say, go down below." Flavius was never able to recover from the great loss of Lake Spring. He died only 2 years later. Roanoke Red was able to stay in operation until 1908, when it became a sanatorium. As for what remains of Lake Spring, a third lake used as the main reservoir was filled, and the other two remained part of the city's water supply for several years before it was determined not to be sanitary. In 1900, the town of Salem bought the hotel grounds and lakes from the New York Building and Loan Association that had owned it since the fire. Shortly after, it opened as Salem's first ever public park. The streetcar stretching from Roanoke added a stop at Lake Spring Park, and tourism increased once again. A while later, a gazebo bandstand was moved from the old courthouse to Lake Spring at the request of the Salem Silver Cornet Band. It resembled a popular gazebo that had been there at the time of the hotel. In 1909, the park was closed to the public due to health concerns with the water supply. Sometime later, it was abandoned as the municipal water supply, and on July 24th of 1931, it was officially dedicated as a public park with much celebration. Today, Lake Spring Park is known to locals as the Duck Pond, and is a popular location for photos, dates, the occasional wedding, and pausing in the adjacent parking lot to eat Whoppers while watching the ducks. Lake Spring remains, although it may not be the scenic Great Spring that Andrew Jackson frequented, or Flavius Chapman's grand resort that delighted visitors from around the country for 16 years during America's Gilded Age. But it still remains a delightful park that brings joy to locals every day. Although the Grand Hotel may be gone, 2 of its lakes and a few of its guests may remain as ghosts of a gilded past that once sat on this rather unassuming commercial part of Salem's Main Street. So, what are your thoughts? Let us know in the comments below. And let us know what story you'd like us to uncover next at SkyParlorHistory. And thanks so much for watching. Don't forget to give this video a thumbs up and subscribe.